My name is Riley Hawkins, though everyone calls me Ree. I am 32 years old now, and I'm about to tell you about my biggest sins and let you decide if it was deserved or not. But let me start from the beginning, because you need to understand what was taken from me before you can understand what I took back. I don't remember a single moment of affection between my parents, no quick kiss in the kitchen, no hand-holding, no inside jokes or pet names. It was just tension, always a constant hum of contempt that filled every corner of the house. My father, Matthew Hawkins, was the kind of man who sucked oxygen out of the room without saying a word. Broad shoulders, squared jaw, and a permanent frown. He didn't shout much, but he didn't have to. His silence was louder than most people's rage. My mother, Diane, was a former elementary school teacher who'd given up her career when I was born, a decision I suspect she regretted every day of her life. She always moved around my father like a shadow, always making space, always guessing what he needed before he asked. In turn, he treated her like a staff. Worse than a staff, actually. He at least said thank you to the landscapers. Growing up, I'd witness small intimacies between other couples and feel a hollow ache in my chest because I knew my parents would never be seen that way, would never look at each other with anything but cold tolerance. My father looked at my mother and me with barely concealed disgust, as if we were inconveniences he was forced to endure. So I spent my childhood trying to be perfect, thinking he might look at me differently. He never did. The one time I asked my mother why Daddy didn't love us, she smiled that practiced smile that never reached her eyes and said, "Your father loves us in his own way, Riley. He's just not so good at showing it." Even at 14, I knew that was bullshit. I left for college 8 days after I turned 18, accepting a scholarship to study English literature without looking back. Years later, I had built a life in California that had nothing to do with that silent house in Indiana, gotten a job at a publishing house, lived in a shared apartment, and was dating a very kind guy named Lennox. I was happy, or at least I was learning what happiness might feel like, but each time I called my mother, I could hear the loneliness in her voice, but she never confided, and wouldn't hear anything about leaving the marriage. I was 26 when my father called for the first time in 8 years to tell me in his flat, emotionless voice that my mother had collapsed at the grocery store, and I needed to deal with it because he was traveling for a conference in Atlanta. In the next 5 hours, I was on a plane, and the moment she opened the door, I knew this wasn't just stress. She looked smaller, her skin was dull, her eyes were ringed with dark circles. The TV was on in the living room. My father sat with eyes glued to the screen with remote in his hand like a scepter. He glanced at me once, "Oh, you're here," and turned back to the TV. The next day, we went to the doctor while her supposed husband traveled to Atlanta. There were lots of tests and scans that came back 3 days later. When the doctor said cancer, it was like someone sucked all the color out of the room. Words blurred together as the doctor explained the treatment options with the careful neutrality of someone who delivered bad news too many times. Chemotherapy, stage, cost, and surgery. My mother sat very still, hands folded in her lap. "That's bad, right?" she asked, trying to mask her fear. The doctor's kind and tired eyes rested on her. "We're going to fight it, but yes, it's serious." I made the mistake of calling my father to tell him about the diagnosis and treatment plan. I mentioned that Mom was terrified and in pain. "Well, she's always been dramatic," he said. "I'll be back Friday, but I'm sure she'll be fine." Then we scheduled chemo, and I resigned from my job by the end of the week. "Are you sure?" my coworker Jenna asked. I just nodded tiredly. Back at home, Matthew didn't change. On the morning of her first chemo, I was helping my mother get dressed when I heard his footsteps in the hallway. "You're taking her now?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Do you want to come?" He checked his watch. "I've got a meeting." "You can reschedule," I snapped before I could stop myself. "She's starting cancer treatment." He shrugged. "They'll do what they'll do whether I'm there or not." The following 6 months were a special kind of hell. I took my mother to appointments, helped her to the bathroom when she was too weak to walk alone. I learned to change 4 bags, and slept in a chair beside her bed most nights listening to her labored breathing, terrified that each breath might be her last. My father just existed around us like a furniture. 3 months in, I found the credit card statement he'd left on the kitchen counter, charges from expensive restaurants I knew he hadn't taken my mother to, a hotel in Key West, and a $1,000 bracelet. Definitely not for his dying wife. I confronted him about it. Who is she? I asked. He didn't even look up. That's none of your concern. You're cheating on Mom while she's dying of cancer, so it's my concern. Now he looked up at me coldly. Your mother and I have an understanding, and our marriage is none of your business. An understanding? She's dying, Matthew. I yelled. He stood up, clearly annoyed that I was challenging him. Riley, you need to learn to stay in your lane. Your mom knows she can use the exit whenever she wants. That night, I wept bitterly for my poor mother. Months later, she was scheduled for a second round of chemo, but she didn't make it. That sad morning, she couldn't get out of bed. Her breathing was labored and her eyes glassy. Mom, I cried desperately, Mom, stay with me. The next thing I remember was an ambulance and a blur of hospital corridors. She was gone before they could even attempt the second chemo. Later, in a small white room that smelled like defeat, a doctor said she went into cardiac arrest. I'm sorry, we did everything we could. I heard him, but it felt like the words were coming from very far away. When I could finally move, I stepped into the hallway and called Matthew. He answered on the second ring. What is it? He asked, annoyed. Mom's gone, I said, my voice breaking. There was a long silence before he said, I'm out of town. We'll talk when I get back. Before I could say another word, he hung up. Well, I found out where he had been 3 days later, but I didn't bother. Weeks later, we buried my mom without him. You guessed right. Another business trip. Your father couldn't make it, one of the neighbors asked carefully, as if there was a sane explanation. He's busy, I said. It was easier than telling the truth. That he chose to be somewhere else. I moved back to the city a week after the funeral. My savings were thin, my resume had a hole, and my heart felt like someone had hollowed it out with a spoon. Matthew never reached out for once. Neither did I. The silence lasted for 4 years, until the day the hospital called about him. I was reheating microwaved pasta when my phone rang. Hello. Is this Riley Hawkins? A woman asked. This is Nurse Jenkins from St. Agnes Hospital. Your father was brought in a few hours ago and you're listed as his emergency contact. My stomach dropped. What happened? I asked. He was found unresponsive in a hotel room, she said. The paramedics suspect a stroke. He's stable for now, but we need someone to come in and discuss his care. A hotel room, of course. I'll be there tomorrow, I said and hung up. I sat on the kitchen floor, back against the cabinets for support. I could have ignored him, let the woman from his trips come rescue her vacation partner. But somewhere in my bones, something tired said, You'll go. Not for him. But so you can live with yourself later. So I went. He was in a bed, wires everywhere with machines beeping. One side of his face drooped, and his right arm lay useless on the sheet. His eyes opened when he heard my footsteps. Took you long enough, he slurred. Good to see you too, Dad, I replied. The doctor explained everything. Hemorrhagic stroke from high blood pressure. They'd found certain enhancement drugs in his system that didn't mix well with his age and condition. Recovery might take very long. Does he have other family we should contact? The doctor asked. I wanted to say yes and walk away, but I did the opposite. When he was discharged, he couldn't be left alone. He needed someone to help him bathe, dress, walk, and take pills. Insurance covered some rehab, but not enough. So I moved back into the house I thought I'd escaped for good. But he was a very bad patient. Even at my mercy, he couldn't even hide his hatred for me. If he noticed I'd given up a second chance at my life in the city to babysit a man who never cared whether I lived or died, he didn't show it. He made my life unbearable and seized every opportunity to rain insults on me and Mom. I can't lie, I was already plotting to dump the ungrateful man before I stumbled on that file. One afternoon, I was looking for his insurance card in his office when my fingers brushed a yellow envelope. Last will and testament of Matthew Hawkins. I opened the envelope. The paper was crisp, stained by the dark ink. I skimmed it first. I, Matthew Hawkins, being of sound mind and body blah, blah, legal phrases. Then I saw the section with names. He had willed the house, his properties, investments, and savings. Every single thing. To Evan Hawkins and Melissa Smith. I stared in shock. I read it again, slower this time. To my son, Evan James Hawkins, and to Melissa Smith, my longtime partner. I was still dealing with the shock of my father having another family, ones that just didn't care enough to show up now that he was no longer useful. When I saw it, to Riley Hawkins, I have provided financially for during her upbringing and education, and now consider my obligation fulfilled. Like I was a bill that had been paid off and now could be discarded. I didn't realize my hands were shaking until the pages rattled. In the living room, I heard him cough, and the TV droned on with some sports commentary on a game he once would have been yelling at. He had planned to die and leave me nothing. Not even the house my mother had scrubbed on her hands and knees. I put the will back in the envelope and stood there as anger burned in my chest. I had questions. So many questions. "You found it?" he asked when I came back, not looking at me. I just stood there for a minute. "Why do you hate us so much?" I finally asked. He blinked. "What?" "You heard me," I said. "Why did you hate us so much?" His lip curled. "Don't start. I'm still waiting for your answers," I said in all seriousness. He grabbed the remote and muted the TV. "Your mother ruined my life," he said. I swallowed. "How?" "She got pregnant," he said flatly. I was just 31 and had plans. One drunken night, she decides to forget her pills, and suddenly she's crying about a baby and how she can't do this alone. My stomach dropped. "She told me you both wanted a child. She told you whatever made her look better," he cut in. "She trapped me, and you were the trap. Your appearance limited my life options." My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice even. "You could have left. Not without everyone calling me the bad guy," he said. "You were just an everyday proof that I'd never get away." "You realize I didn't ask to be part of this," I asked painfully. "Well, you are the main character," he shot back at me. "You and your mother were just leeches," he hissed before turning his back to me. It was there I decided that I was going to take back all that was rightfully mine. If I was just a bill that had been paid, then he was just a man I no longer owed anything. His medications were usually lined up on the counter and labeled for each day of the week. The nurse had helped me set them up and walked me through which color pill did what. I knew exactly how each one worked. And I knew which ones would make him sicker if they were forgotten. Consistency is everything, the nurse had warned me. If he skips or takes them wrong, his risk goes way up. Then I decided to start there. I started to make mistakes with the medications. The next morning, his morning dose were in my palm. 3 pills. But he received just 2. One slid back into the bottle. He watched me bring the water like he always did. Bored and slightly annoyed. "Used to being served." "Open your mouth," I said. He did and swallowed slowly. The second day, he complained about being more tired than usual, but I ignored him. The nurse came the next afternoon, took his blood pressure and frowned slightly. "He's higher than I'd like," she said. "Has he been taking it as instructed?" "Yes," I said. "He hates it, but I do my best." Her eyes softened. "You're doing a lot. Don't forget to take care of yourself too, okay?" I nodded like the brave, exhausted daughter. By 4th day of my leaving out the medication, he was visibly deteriorated. "Those hospital quacks messed me up," he muttered when he got a severe headache. "We'll talk to the doctor," I said. I made sure we didn't. Weeks blurred into each other, and the more mistakes I made, the weaker he got. Sometimes late at night, doubt crept in, but I didn't let it deter me. One stormy night, it all came to a head. Rain hammered the windows as I engrossed myself in a book. "Riley," he called, his voice more faint than ever. I walked in and found him slumped in his chair, skin pale, breathing shallow. "What's wrong?" I asked. My head, his words slurred. "It feels wrong, I can't focus." I wrapped the blood pressure cuff around his arm and hit the button. The numbers weren't good. I was scared and could have snapped back into good daughter mode right there. Instead, I knelt in front of him and took his hand. "I'm going to call an ambulance," I said. "But before I do, we need to talk about money." Those words made his eyes sharpen. "What?" he rasped. "The hospital called last time," I said. "Insurance is getting tired of you and rehab? Therapists? They want guarantees for payment if this keeps happening." "I worked my whole life," he muttered, breath hitching. "They can send the bill. They can send you to a state facility if they decide you're a risk," I said. "You said it yourself, you'd rather die than end up in one of those places." Panic flickered. "I need access to your accounts," I went on. "I can't keep guessing what's due, what's paid, and what's not." "You want private care?" Then you need to trust me with the money. His pride and fear battled for a few seconds. Fear won. He told me where to get the keys and details in almost incoherent words. Okay, I said. Let me grab it, then I'll call 911. The paramedics came with sirens and questions. And I answered, putting on the act of a totally exhausted daughter. They nodded. They'd heard that story before. Stubborn old people and exhausted caregivers trying to keep them alive. In the ER, the doctors shook their heads. He's not going to bounce back the way he did last time, one told me. You should start thinking about long-term planning. I understand, I muttered and headed home immediately. Back home. In the quiet of his office, I opened the blue folder. Every single detail was there, including where to call. I sat at his desk and opened my laptop. The first transfer was small, a few $100 into a new account in my name. Then I turned off banking notifications on his phone. Just in case. While he spent another week in the hospital, I became his shadow in the financial system. I didn't empty anything in one go. That would have triggered alarms. A caregiver reimbursement here. A medical expense transfer there, and lingering debts. Then I started siphoning. By the time he was ready to come home, one of his investment accounts would be almost empty. Another thinner than before. He wouldn't notice. Whenever I visited him at the hospital, he complained about the food, the noise, and the useless physical therapists. I just pretended to care. One afternoon, a social worker sat with us. Mr. Hawkins, we need to discuss durable power of attorney and healthcare proxy, she said. If your condition worsens, we need a clear person to speak on your behalf. Right now, there's nothing on file. He frowned. What does that mean? It means decisions on your health gets delayed, she said. It would be easier for everyone if Riley had the authority to handle things if you can't. He looked at her, then at me. I kept my face concerned, not eager. You trust her? The woman asked gently. He snorted. She doesn't know what she's doing half the time. But the others don't answer their phones, so I guess I don't have much choice. It was probably the closest thing to a compliment I would ever get from him. The social worker smiled. We have standard forms. We can send in a notary. You just need to sign. Fine, he muttered. Let's get it over with. They sent the paperwork. Medical consent. Financial power of attorney. A stack of legalese he was too tired to read. I took advantage of the opportunity. I sat by his bed, going through it page by page. This one says I can talk to your doctors, I explained. Sign here. He signed. This one lets me pay bills, deal with insurance, I said. So they stop harassing you. He signed. Nestled in the stack were the property transfer forms I'd prepared, using templates that my very close friend Naomi had sent me. This just makes things smoother if something happens, I said. It keeps the government away from your assets. The government's full of thieves, he muttered, and signed it with his hands shaking badly. To anyone watching, it looked like a sick man making sure his daughter could help him. To me, it was him handing me the last set of keys. A week later, I stood in line at the county office with those forms in a folder. Recording deeds? The clerk asked. Yes, I said. Estate planning, my dad's not well. She nodded, already bored. Stamp, stamp, stamp. Just like that, the house and 2 other properties slid quietly into my name. By the time he came home again, his body was weaker and his name wasn't on as many things as it used to be. But he didn't know it yet. Now, he spent most of his time in the recliner, half dozing in front of the TV. He also seemed tired of hurling insults and hostility, but it was no longer my business. I also returned to his proper drug routine, since I had gotten what I wanted and kept pretending that nothing had changed. When everything was finally ready, bags packed, papers filed, money moved, nursing facility arranged, I picked an ordinary morning. Dad, I said, standing between him and the screen. We need to talk. He frowned. Move. I'm watching. I took the remote and turned it off. What on earth are you doing? He asked. The words were thin, but the attitude was still there. I found your will, I said. And, he asked cautiously. You left me nothing, I said. After everything. He looked away, jaw tight. I gave you a childhood, he said. You think college is free? Food? Clothes? You think that just appears? I did my job, you're grown now. You didn't give me a childhood, I said calmly. You gave me a roof and tension, and college was on scholarship. But that's not the point anymore. I walked to the side table, picked up the folder, and set it on his lap. Read the top lines. What's this? He asked, squinting at the text. He saw the content, then the stamped county seal. Confusion clouded his face. I don't understand. These are the deeds to the house, the duplex, the cabin, all transferred to me. I watched the realization slowly land. His breathing picked up, shallow and fast. You changed them, he whispered. And you signed them, I said, half smiling. His gaze snapped to mine, hazier but angry. You tricked me. I did exactly what you taught me, Dad. I looked out for myself. You made it clear I was nothing but a paid-off debt, so I stopped trusting you with my future. He swallowed with difficulty. This is illegal, he rasped. I'll call someone to get it reversed. With what money? I asked. You think you're still sitting on a fortune? His forehead creased. The accounts, I said. I've been managing them, remember? At least for once in your life, you paid exactly what it cost to have someone clean after your mess. He licked his dry lips desperately. How much is left? Enough to keep you in a decent nursing facility for a while, I said. Nothing fancy, but they are good. He stared at the papers on his lap, as if they might reassemble into something different. How could you? He whispered. You had choices, I said. You could have been a present father at least, but you chose to treat me like an outcast, punishing me for a sin I did not commit, and then you expect me to break my back as your unpaid nurse until you die, and I drown in nothing but funeral costs. He closed his eyes for a second, as if the room were spinning. I gave you everything you needed, he wheezed. I laughed then, a humorless laugh. Even you know that you are lying, I told him. Anyways, I've arranged a bed for you at Ridgeview Care. They're expecting you. I've already handled the paperwork. Your remaining funds will be routed there. When that runs out, they'll apply for whatever state assistance you qualify for. His mouth fell open slightly. You're putting me in a home? He croaked. You're not safe here alone, and I'm done being the one who keeps you alive, so you can keep resenting me, I said. His hand twitched on the armrest. Riley, you can't leave me like this, please. The words came out cracked, words he had never said to me before. I can and I will. I have no mercy left to show you. I picked up my keys from the table. Maybe you can call the people you put in your will. Bet they won't pick up. His eyes filled with panic as I walked to the door. I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. The nurse will be here soon to get you checked in. Don't give her a hard time. Then I walked out. This time, I didn't look back, or I tried not to. I hung around and watched from a distance minutes later as the nurse wheeled him out and drove off to the nursing home. Ridgeview Care called me a week later. Hi, this is Jessica from Ridgeview, a woman said. We just wanted to confirm we have your father, Matthew Hawkins, settled in. You're listed as the contact. Would you like regular updates? No, I said. Use the other numbers in his file. The ones he listed before me. We've tried those, she said carefully. No one picks up. Mail comes back. Are you sure? I'm sure, I said. Okay, she replied, unsure. If anything urgent happens, if it's about medical decisions, you can follow whatever your standard protocol is, I cut in. I won't be involved. There was a pause on the line. All right, she said finally and hung up. I never visited him, but I did send clothes or snacks or anything else out of pity. Though, revenge did not fix me. What it did was balance the scale, and now I've moved past any regrets. Thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe and turn on the notifications bell. Let me hear your thoughts in the comments.